Hello everybody and most welcome to 708, and we are presently in a famous place, the dreadful room number 7, called the Student Killer. Have a look around, Kalle. It does not have windows, it does not have air. Show the air vent. This is the dread of all students. And if it's hard enough to get creativity, it will disappear in this horrible bunker. I think even Hitler had some air. Not here. Could you raise it a bit, please, Kalle?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, as you heard, we will begin with humor today. Very fitting subject, since we're in room number 7. It's a bit ironical. And I shouldn't complain because I haven't been here for at least 2 years, I think, actually. So, of course, it's not problematic. We are going to take up Edward de Bono. We're still on the quest of understanding how do we get knowledge of the whole. I made it like this, like a yin and yang. Any picture will serve the purpose as long as it's divided into parts. Those two parts are their absolute contradictions. And of course, the contradiction in the foundation in the very bottom is the quantum mechanical, wave and particle, completely excluding. Edward de Bono, the famous creativity guru who passed away earlier this year, had an idea of what thinking is that actually went against all that was known at the time. He was studying and making research in neurology in the late 60s when he discovered that thinking always comes in patterns that by time automatically gets more and more stable. You can see it like a river system. Like a river system, dividing and getting in different alleys. And this is actually self-organization. He means that this sort of cognition, or whatever you can call it, is actually organizing itself. It does not need any conscious effort. It will evolve in this way. And this is the base for thinking. But he means if you want to get further beyond what is, you could call this what is, or what we have at the instance. If you want to get to what to become, you need to break the pattern. And there, he says, thinking comes. So thinking is not a pattern. Thinking is the breaking of pattern. And he says, therefore, humor at the core of reality. And be very careful here. I do not mean that humor should come with knowledge. No, that's not what he's saying at all. And that's often the case, that you read something or you listen to someone having a lecture and there's a little bit of humor on the side, like a side dish, like a soup to accompany the dinner. No, he said the foundation is humor, the breaking of the structure. That is thinking. And that, my friends, is paradoxical. Because here you have reason. Here you have the order. Here you have everything sane, reliable, habitual. And in the breakage, that's where thinking erupts. And you can compare this to telling a joke. First, something is established. You have associations and thinking that leads you into the alleyway, safe and sound. And the beginning of the story must lead you there. It must be things that you recognize and put into the association list. And then there's a couple of lines, and then you have the punchline, and the punchline breaks everything. Bob Hope, he was a fantastic comedian, and one of his jokes was this: "Oh, I'm very disappointed with this Christmas. I only received 3 golf clubs. And on top of that, only 2 of them had swimming pools." And here we're first led into familiar territory. Well, the path we know, or the paths we know. We hear about golf clubs and we start thinking about wood, steel, plastic, what you have as clubs. And you see already picture Bob Hope receiving 3 golf clubs in a package. But then all of a sudden, when he says swimming pools, there's a complete break. He was not referring to ordinary playing golf clubs. He was actually referring to the clubs. And it has to make some sense too. Yes, Bob Hope was an insanely rich person as well. So he could possibly think just what I said. Only 2 had swimming pools. It's very funny. But once you know, and this is important, and that goes to everybody, to you listen, when it's broken, in the moment it's broken, you can develop a new thinking and you understand. And this is the exact moment of ex posteriori. You can always construct a reality once it's broken, but you need to separate this. Something I said so many times, because without this separation, this distinction, you'd be lost, completely lost. And this is this breakage that is thinking, because thinking can never be the old. Then you are the automatic process, because he discovered actually it is an automatic process. You don't need to put in any conscious effort for it to happen. It happens anyway. But however, with the punchline, you need to put an effort, because normally these things in real life happens like accident. I mentioned many times the marvelous invention or discovery. It's a mixture of Alexander Fleming, the Scottish physicist. He forgot the soup. When he came back Monday, it was on a Friday, it was molded, and he discovered the bacterium was dying off. Instead of getting pissed off, he saw this like a breakage. You need to do the thinking as well. And he altered everything. He altered the idea that his bacteria colonies were gone, and he saw something completely new in this that was not in here from the beginning. And then he could say, I could use the penicillin to kill off the bacteria. And he saw that that could develop into something completely new. And that is thinking. And that is what we should do all the time. And de bono means it's too long to wait for the accidents to happen. We need to put them in by force. We need to discipline ourselves. So the new thing with Edward de Bono was the discipline leading to this new thinking. And he calls that to make a distinction between the old ways, the automatic thinking, that he calls vertical thinking, because it automatically goes down thanks to gravity. Like I can prove here, it falls down. But this is lateral thinking, and lateral thinking takes effort. You need to do something. You need 2 things, effort and discipline. And that is entirely different from where we are at now, academic thinking. because academic thinking is completely passive. You don't break anything. And there was a big investigation made at the universities in England. Not even there could actually people discern between ex anteriori and ex posteriori. They thought that inventions could sort of be reasoned out with the material you already have. And he knows that that is not so. Something that's been proven by neurology so many times. This is actually the working patterns of our thinking system. But still people think, well, you can usually go backwards and you can invent things from what you have. No, you cannot. Done is done. And I think, and this I'm not going to take up now, we have a rather limited time scale, but this also goes very well to explain why is it so problematic with Schrödinger's cat. This could be very helpful, because this is what Roger Federer did. You have two different strands. You have what you perceive to be reality and the ex posteriori take of the whole thing. Edvard de Bono, a genius. This thinking goes hand in hand with what we mentioned earlier, that reality in itself is paradoxical. And what do you need to do to be in sync with reality? Well, you need to have at least one part of the thinking, not the whole, but not one part of the thinking should actually be directed towards this stuff, this paradoxical thinking. I'd say that's necessary, otherwise you would be stranded with the old. And here, everything that exists, or there's existence. You could actually write it like this. This is ontic, and this is ontological, and the idea of Heidegger. Ontic is what we all perceive to be reality. Ontological is the real reality, the vivid, the presencing, the thinking. Here you have the knowledge. This is automatic. There's no knowledge. Here you have consciousness. Here you have no consciousness. And maybe another important factor when it comes to quantum mechanics, will exists here. You have will here. But here you cannot have a will, obviously, because everything is deterministic. If you look backwards from Alexander Fleming, you will see, oh, it was obvious. Once it's invented, yes, everything is obvious in past tense. All the inventions in the world that have been made, all the explorations, all new thinking is obvious ex posteriori. And you can sit by a book and actually, if you're very clever and very meticulous, invent everything once more. But that's not the same thing. It's actually before it's been thought up. And this is of course paradoxical, because in the beginning of my story with Bob Hope, everything made sense, didn't it? And it was meant to make sense to a very high degree. Then comes the punchline, and for all of a sudden your brains go high wire. What? Swimming pools? Golf club doesn't have, what do you mean? And that's the moment of zero. This is the quantum effect in action. This is where everything happens. Nothing is decided. The cat is neither dead nor alive. Everything is open. And smack, you're in ex posteriori, and you explicate the whole thing, which you need to do as well. So none of these parts are bad, but we need to do all of them. 1, 2, 3. This is the working method of thinking, and I assume that was also in antiquity to some degree, especially before we have this advent of the amnesia. But I think it continued because it didn't strike all the way to the bottom. We know the people of antiquity did a lot of things like aqueduct colosseums, and those were new things to some extent. So you could also call this the setup of the joke. If I'm a good storyteller like Bob Hope was, I am nothing of the kind. But he was excellent at leading people into the familiar path. Once they were walking in the familiar path and see, oh, I recognize that, that's my neighbor, and look, I can see the sea over there. Then he broke it. And he could make people more or less explode with laughter. And that was his skill, and they paid him well for that, of course, for many, many years. This could also be the switch-over process. It's here where you get new insights. And it's also here that you get knowledge. And then you will ask, wasn't there knowledge here? Well, the interesting thing is, everything that you have in this storage, this unconscious storage, need to be like you go down to the cellar and take out a nice thing, maybe a piece of porcelain. It needs to be reanimated. Every time it needs to be looked in a new way. It's the same form, yes, but it's actually asymmetrical thinking, also knowledge. It needs to be reanimated, given a new purpose, given a new meaning. And that is also asymmetrical. So you see here, at the very core, we need proper thinking, because otherwise we don't have knowledge. And now you know why he became so debatable somewhere in the 90s. He felt this is time to take to the public, because De Bono was always publishing his books. I think it was India, like 70 titles. I have no idea. He was very productive. He must have had the energy of a whole elephant herd. And he did his lectures, and he did his advising to different financial organs. But he wants to reach the public, and he wrote an article in The Guardian, and it was called The Lead of the Free, The Gang of Free. And he said that the ontic thinking could be represented by Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So you could get into the understanding of the article. I see how he's thinking. And then he said, we are under the pressure of this, the Gang of the Free. And he was also using the Gang of the Free for a specific reason, because in those times it was very, very still in people's head, in their association in this, the Gang of the Four. It was a horrible gang, I think it was in China, but it doesn't matter where they were, the Gang of the Four. People remember there were horrible dictators, and that's why he called it the Gang of the Free. He couldn't find a fourth one. We could have taken Parmenides, but of another time. But that goes to show he was excellent at leading people into the right area. So when they start reading, they start thinking, how is it connected with the Gang of Free, these horrible people, and Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates? And then he showed that to have knowledge, you need actually to break the thinking. And he thought this is going to be a terrific opening to the public. Possibly it were. Yeah, I think it was very popular. It was well spoken of. But the people with a pen, the people who did write well and could participate in writing articles in newspapers like The Guardian or the London Times, they were not happy. So they began to write. And the newspaper, The Guardian, got written down by people from Oxford, Cambridge, Oxbridge, you name it, red brick universities, especially the red brick universities, and said he's an apostate. He should be burned at the stakes. Of course, they took away the worst accusations, but one lingered on, and they said it was dreadful. How can you say that? And that was the last time he wrote anything in any newspaper. This wasn't too popular among the established. Who uses this ontic, well established, with a fixed meaning, only one meaning, in ready-made boxes, stored away? And he showed to them by leading them into this story, using trickery, a sorcery, maybe they thought, how could that happen in this story? And then discover the smack was actually against them. That wasn't intended by the Bono, but for some people it got a smack in their face. And when they realized their knowledge is no longer knowledge, I think that's when the S-H-I-T hit the fan. And the turmoil took 2-3 years before it stopped. He was cut out of subsidies in London, for instance, at the university he was working with there. He later founded his own university at Valletta in Malta, where he could do what he wanted to. But that goes to show it's not only our beloved friend, the surgeon and anesthetist doctor, who has objections to this. I think there's a lot of people do. And of course the people who liked the article were not people of the pen maybe, so they didn't write any defense articles. And I think De Bono wrote one defense article, I'm not sure, but he gave it up. That was the last time he participated in public, which I think is a shame. He should have a special dedication in our book, I think, De Bono, because sort of he is a hero. He was the only one who actually went against the stream for a very, very long time. And he showed people that you can achieve this proper thinking with sort of a discipline. You need a format. You need to establish this, just like Bob Hope and just like De Bono did in the article with the Gang of Three, which is pretty excellent actually. And then you need to break it. Actually, I come up with a joke now here. It's truth. And it was actually remembrance. And it was when the Gang of the Four was sent to court. They were accused and was supposed to get lifetime or something like that. And then it was the woman in the gang, was just one woman. The widow of Mao actually. And they said, well, if you're not careful, Madam Mao, we will send you to execution. And she just smacked her hand on the table. That's exactly what I want. I want you to execute me now. I cannot wait. I don't want to listen to this blabber anymore. Don't you understand that? That was a breakage. And the video camera at those times were not single to the court, but you can imagine how they looked in their faces, open-mouthed and everything. I think after she got her will, just by surprise. So that goes to show it can actually be incredibly helpful to use asymmetric thinking in daily life, even if you are in the court. Even there are options. Okay, I think I'll round up here and say thank you from room number 7.
Thank you.